ladies and gentlemen, now hosting the RizzoCast, put your hands together for Steven Rissotto!
What's going on, everybody, and welcome. My name is Steven Rissotto. I cover the San Francisco Giants for SFBay, and I'm the host of RizzoCast, a podcast that features current and former big league players, coaches, fans, media, and others who are regarded as some of the brightest minds around the game of baseball. Today's guest is, well, me. Yes, I am today's RizzoCast guest, and let me tell you why. Over the past 4 years, I have been blessed with the opportunity to produce over 170 episodes with interviews of former players and current and professional players, big leaguers, coaches, fans, media, others, a lot more. It's been an unbelievable ride, and I honestly don't envision this ending anytime soon, even if my time gets dwindled sometimes. So here's the deal. I recently graduated college, and I came to the realization that many people in the listening audience probably really aren't familiar with me or my career aspirations. I'm usually the one asking the questions, so I thought it would be an interesting idea to see what it's like to kind of have the tables turned a little bit for the listeners to get to know me, Steven Rissotto. For this occasion, I brought on my friend and co-host over at the Shutdown Inning podcast. Go check that out, Tylor Hall, and he will step in as host. We had a really solid conversation. I hope you learned a lot about me and who I want to be. This is episode number 170. Let's get started.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to RizzoCast, episode 170. And we have a very special guest today, Steven Rissotto. Welcome to RizzoCast.
This is weird. Thank you, Tylor, for doing this. This is very strange, but I guess I'm happy to be on my own podcast.
Yeah, I'm asking the questions today, Steven. Look at me. I am the captain now. Okay?
Yes, you have the keys to this. I'm just gonna kind of sit back and roll with it.
To this well-oiled machine. So
yes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. So I think you probably, you wanted your listeners to get to know you a little bit. They've listened to you for 169 episodes now, asking the questions. You do a great job, highlighting your guests. So now it's time for you to be highlighted, my friend. So, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it. And 169 episodes, and I feel like there's a lot, obviously I have friends and people that I've connected with that listen and everything, and they give me good feedback. But I feel like there's still people that may not know me. So I think it's a good opportunity to get started with that.
Yeah, they will know you after this, my friend. So just to start, I think most people know you at least in some capacity in association with baseball. So like, when and how did baseball enter your life?
Yeah, it was kind of weird because it just kind of happened, and the Giants went on some of those runs in the early 2010s, and they won the World Series in 2010. I was in third grade, and that was kind of the first time that I was like really fixated on baseball. I have family that kind of has always fixated on baseball and on the Giants, and family that grew up, watching Willie Mays and Will Clark in the 80s and Barry Lamar Bonds later on. And my guy was Tim Lincecum. And I give all the credit in the world to Tim Lincecum for getting me into baseball. He was the first one that I really kind of fixated on. He was just a young, skinny guy, not very tall at 5'7", 5'8", 165, maybe even less, maybe even a little bit more.
If his jersey's wet, if he's wearing one of the new jerseys that's soaked through.
Yeah, soaking wet. I like that term, 5'8", 165, soaking wet. And he just reminded me of people that you would see just skateboarding up the Embarcadero. And it's like, he was the type of athlete that kind of represented what is possible in baseball. And what I mean by that is like anybody could play. There's Prince Fielder that could play. There's Jose Altuve that could play. There's Aaron Judge that could play. There's physical specimens. There's guys that don't look like physical specimens. And that kind of got my attention, and started following those Giants teams, and they had great pitching with the timely hitting that just kind of put everything together. And I always like the kind of chess match. It seems like every pitch there's like a meaning behind it, and it's kind of like playing chess in a way. And there's stuff there, and I like the way it's explained. I like the pace of baseball. And then after that, I kind of just started playing it. I kind of got a little bit of a late start into youth baseball. Uh, Started playing Little League when the kids were pitching already. And that was terrifying. It was not good. I was not good at baseball in the early goings. And I think the first year that I played, I did not get a hit the whole season. I don't even think I swung the bat until, the last part of the year. So it took a while, but for the most part, that was kind of how I got started into being a baseball fan.
So essentially, you're a bandwagoner. Jump on in
Oh yeah.
2010 and off to the races.
Yep.
Uh,
8 years
so
old.
yeah, so yeah, it seems like you were hooked on baseball. Basically, like once you discovered it, you got kind of hooked in. So what was like third grade Steven into before you discovered baseball?
That's a good question. I guess I really wasn't into anything. I mean, I liked obviously like, what a normal kid would like in movies and hanging out with friends and I obviously, we would do some activities and we would go and do mini golf, we would go swimming as kid, like all the stuff that like kids do and I know this is gonna come off as like, well, back in my day, but like I didn't get like a tablet or a phone until like I was in middle school. So this was like still pre that and we'd play outside until 5 o'clock and all that stuff. But baseball was like once I started getting into baseball, kind of just took off and it took off quick. Like I got to know the league super quick. I got to know the rules super quick. And if I didn't understand something, then I'd like figured it out on my own, So
Yeah.
it all happened pretty quick and like quick story. Like I used to collect a lot of baseball cards, probably in like fourth or fifth grade, sixth grade. That was kind of the prime of it. And me and my friends would get packs from Target and we'd go to card shows and we'd just open them and we'd watch all the YouTubers that would open them and we would trade. We would sit there and trade and then we would try and make teams like the best teams. I still have binders full of baseball cards. My Uncle Pat like would always send baseball cards. We got like 3 boxes one time. I still have them of just like 80s and 90s baseball cards. So I was kind of obsessed with that. There's a few of my friends that are still involved in that and they do a good job with trading and selling and all that. Um, but that was how I got to know like the players and I got to identify like what team everybody was with. And I feel like I knew more players in like 2011, 2012, 2013 than I do now, which is crazy because I don't collect cards and like there's new players coming in and I can't keep track of like who signs where. So I feel like that was like the golden era of me knowing where people are. But that it all happened quick.
Nice. Well, yeah, you mentioned that you started playing baseball when kids were pitching. I know eventually you got the hang of it a little bit. You stopped trying to have to work the pitch count in every at bat and got the bat off your shoulder. But in high school, you were mostly a pitcher, or maybe exclusively a pitcher. Maybe you can shed light on that. But what was the scouting report on Steven Risotto, the pitcher? What was
Yes.
the arsenal?
Yeah, so the first 2 years, like I hit a little bit too. Freshman year, I went into after Little League played some pony, and then I went into like my freshman team, like just super stressed out. Like, am I going to make the team? And every single high school year, all 4 years, I felt unsafe all 4 years going into a high school season. I was like, am I gonna get cut? Am I gonna get cut? And even like the later part of the years where like coaches are like planning and oh, we're gonna have a good year next year, and they're telling me this, and they're like, you're gonna pit. I was still unsure. Like there's still the thought in the back of my head that was like scary and everything. But freshman year and sophomore year played a little bit in the field, played second base mostly, and I didn't have a good arm in the infield. I didn't have any really range that much. But that was kind of just where I was. I pitched. I actually did not pitch regularly until high school, and the freshman coach asked who pitches during tryouts, and I just raised my hand. I said, you know what, if I'm gonna like, I feel like I need something, and I would always like pitch. I would always practice pitching as a kid and like do all the tennis ball stuff against the garage for hours, but I never like fully did it. I got a few appearances in Pony and a few appearances in Little League, but never fully until high school. Uh, and I started off like over the top. I did not throw hard at all. So anybody that played with me or played against me or has seen me play knows that velocity was not my thing. I threw slow, really slow. And from over the top, I had some good moments and I had some bad moments. There are some good moments where like nobody would pick me up and I would get through 5 innings with 45 pitches and it was amazing. Like my first time playing in the Joe DiMaggio League, the summer after my junior season. Yeah, no, yeah, summer after my sophomore season, I played in the Joe DiMaggio League, and I like started the first game of the summer, and like the plan was to go like 2 or 3 innings or whatever, and I ended up throwing a complete game two-hitter against Daly City, and I was not throwing hard at all, but my thing was I wanted to be efficient, I wanted to hit my spots, and I wanted to throw strikes, and um, my arm never hurt, never once did my arm ever hurt. So just being available was something big too. And then my junior year, midway through, there's an outing against Valley Christian High School at Reardon, and I started because I was starting pitcher first half of junior year, and I got lit up. I think they scored 8 runs in the first inning, 7 runs in the first inning, got lit up. And the next day it rained, and we were at the Pacifica cages for practice because we couldn't use a field. And one of the coaches that I've actually had on this podcast, Tom Harlan, shout out, said, try lowering your arm angle a little bit. So like I'd messed around with it before and I tried, and the very next day at Sarah, I was using that arm angle in a game, and just it felt strange at first, but got used to it, and then I ended up having a lot more movement on my pitches. The two seam was just I got the hang of like where to locate it. I figured out a spot down and in where a guy could just ground out to third every time. Um, Sometimes I would like lose the handle and get lit up. Guys would pick me up, but for the most part, I feel like I was used in spots that made me pretty successful overall. But did not throw hard at all. I think the most I got was low 70s towards my senior year. Uh, I remember 71, 72s in there before the pandemic screwed everything up. But yeah, that would be my scouting report. Didn't throw hard, not very athletic, but very embracive of the PO role.
Steven's velocity, Steven's grades, 71, 72 in high school. There you go.
Yeah.
So how early into your baseball life did you start to think about covering baseball? Did you have dreams of ever playing professionally, or was that kind of like a pipe dream? Or if you did, like when did that dream start to morph from playing in the big leagues to covering the big leagues someday?
Yeah, I think if you go back and find like papers that I wrote, there will be like, oh, what do you grow up? What do you want to do when you grow up? And it would be like, oh, play first base for the Giants or something like that. There's probably a few of that. But, also I feel like I pride myself kind of on being very self-aware. I feel like that's a tool that I've gotten over time. I'm self-aware of usually self-aware. I'm sure you've seen times where I'm not self-aware.
I
But
plead the fifth.
yes. But I was self-aware about like my prospects of baseball. And I'm like, okay, this is not gonna. I mean, once you don't have the arm, you don't have the athleticism, and I see that other players did have that, and the players that did have that, like they weren't really going anywhere either. That's when I'm like, okay, this is probably um not it, but I did want to stick around baseball, and I thought about writing and journalism at a very young age, like probably about 11 or 12, when I would, look at some articles on the Giants and on baseball and wonder how the writer got this information, and oh, he's able to talk to the players about baseball, and he does that for a job, so I always thought that was really cool. And I have an uncle that covered sports for a long time in the Midwest, and he covered the Royals, the Chiefs, and so that was a cool part of it too. But I don't know, it was always something that I wanted to do, and I remember I have a picture of myself pointing to the press box when I was probably about 9 or 10, and I said I'm gonna be here one day because I
Yeah.
really like the idea of like the behind the scenes stuff. Because if I'm not going to play, then the next best thing is still being there and getting paid to be there. and just telling the story of baseball because I feel like I'm better with my words than I was with the bat. Or oh, that's another thing on my scouting report. I couldn't hit at all, at all. Just I was all upper body and I had no lower body and I couldn't hit. But yeah, that covering baseball is always appealing. Once I got into high school, I started doing all the things that like aspiring journalists want to do, like started a blog. It was called MLB Stolen Base. Throwback to that. Um, and then it kind of progressed further a little bit.
Nice. Yeah, I was gonna even bring up that photo because I've seen it before. You'll have to share that on the episode or something
Yeah.
when you publish this. It's a great photo. You mentioned it a moment ago. I know that the pandemic impacted everybody, and you were a senior in high school when it happened, so I'm sure that came with its own special set of challenges that maybe not everyone realizes. I know it changed your educational and baseball, experiences quite a bit. So, like, what was it like going through that time? And do you look back on those missed events and opportunities now any differently than when they were kind of fresh in your mind?
Yeah, I think I do look back differently. Like it was kind of a sucky time. Like everything was going well. Just everything was going well. And I know and the funny thing is I know like looking back, I kind of had like the victim mentality where it's like nobody else is going through this but me. But I was wrong. Like there's people that were losing their jobs, there's people that were losing their loved ones. And it all made kind of me losing my senior year of high school look very small when other people have other stuff going on. And like no everything was going well and I remember vividly, never forget March 7th, 2020. We were playing at Burlingame High School and we were getting ready for a game and we were warming up, we were stretching. And before we had started stretching, we heard that one of the wrestlers at school had tested positive for COVID. And it was the first time that the school had gotten a positive COVID case. And because of that, like we weren't able to play. And the starting pitcher was literally warming up in the bullpen. We were all doing our pregame stretching and throwing. And then we were told right before first pitch that like we can't play. Um, and they were like, okay, we're going to be off Monday and we were off Monday, and they're like, okay, it's gonna be a few weeks, and it's a few weeks went by, it was nothing, and we just never went back. And it's weird because like I turned 18 in like the midst of that, and I was like, God, I'm living the same day over and over and over again, not doing anything. I didn't see my friends for a while. Um, and I was mad because like I knew that that was going to be it for baseball. I knew I wasn't going to play again. But I at least wanted to know when my last game was going to be, and it sucked that I didn't get that like that that closure. Now I get the alumni games now, which is still fun and everything. But the cool thing was the newspaper, the school newspaper, which I was a part of for 4 years, was still going. Like we didn't stop, we didn't skip a beat, and that's one of the things I'm most proud of, like during that time. But um it sucked and there's a few years of junior college that I went through that were online too and didn't get the most out of that either, but other people had it worse. So I look back now like it was helpful for me to have something like that. But at the same time it was just kind of a rough point. But um people had it worse. Can't complain too much.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned that you knew your career was over. You went to junior college out of high school. Did you ever consider trying to like walk on to the junior college team just so you could kind of have that, uh, you know, ending to your career?
Yeah, I mean I thought about it, but not for long. I think I went to Skyline Junior College and Coach Harlan, who I've mentioned, he said one time in the weight room when we were still at still going in high school, and he said, you could probably like you catch hitters off guard with your velocity, you add some velocity, like you could probably pitch in junior college, and I thought about it, but I didn't think about it that much. I wanted to go into journalism. That was like the plan all along, and um junior college like a lot of my friends were going to like some big 4-year schools and they were paying a lot of money for a stats class and I was not paying a lot of money for the same stats class and I just thought it was a better deal. And junior college, I always talk about junior college on this podcast with people that went through the programs because I think it is the path even me, like someone who I knew what I wanted to do, and I still thought it was the right path. Not just because of the price, but because um, just the overall experience and um, getting a chance to still do what I want to do and get classes done, get my classes. Um, but I did not think about it that much because the life of a college athlete is one that I just frankly didn't think that I would be able to be suited for because it's a lot. Student
Yeah,
athlete, student athlete is tough in high school, but like it's not even close to what it is in junior college and in college. So I give a lot of credit to the people that are able to do it. I wasn't one of them.
fair enough. Yeah, and but one of the positives that came out of the pandemic was this very podcast. I think you were just rolling around bored or something, and you started RizzoCast kind of early in the pandemic, if I remember correctly. So tell me about the process of getting RizzoCast started. Did you have to learn a lot about how do I record, how do I publish, and like was podcasting always something you were interested in, and or was it just kind of born out of boredom during the pandemic?
Yeah, I would do like little mock, like if I was home alone, I would do like little mock, like pretend. I always like sports talk radio. Like I like listening to KMBR, and every morning on the way to school, we'd listen to Murph and Mac, and we'd listen to Dwayne Kuiper and Mike Krukow spot on Murph and Mac. And um, when Joe Shasky, who's now a friend of mine, when he got on the radio, like started listening to him. Um, and I always thought that like, yeah, it'd be cool to have a podcast. And uh to your point, like I didn't know how to start it. And then when the pandemic hit and I didn't know what to do, I was bored and I thought one of my mom's friends said like Steven should start a podcast. And when I hear stuff like that, and when I hear even when someone throws out something as simple as, "Oh, you should have this person on the podcast," I like take a screenshot with my mind and I
And the
like go
wheels
back,
start turning.
the wheels start turning. So like I heard that and the wheels started turning just a little bit, but I didn't know how to start. And then I went on a podcast with the athletic director, Bob Green at Reardon, who's also been on the podcast. And I did like a little interview with him for his podcast for the school. And we recorded on Zoom. And I was like, I didn't know you could record on Zoom. And this was like the height of Zoom when everybody's on it. And I was like, it downloads right to your computer, so that's cool. And the original like name of RizzoCast was the Throwing Strikes Podcast. So the email that I have like associated with the podcast is still everywhere, Throwing Strikes Podcast at gmail.com. And my like original thing was that I wanted to have on high school and college athletes who were kind of going through the same thing where they had their senior season shut down. Um, and the first episode I had was with Steven and JJ Blecka, who I played baseball with in high school. And it's funny, I see them all over the place now. They used to work at Dick's. Steven, or we call him Bubba, he works in the dugout or in the game used shop right next to the press box at Oracle Park. And
Nice.
JJ, I used to see him at SF State. Um, and just getting people on that I knew was really important. And I talked to them and it went well. And I was like, this could be really fun. And then I had on a few others and then it just started growing. Like, I'm like, you know what? We could abandon um, throwing strikes thing and the whole high school and college players because, I'd rather try to go out and venture a little bit more. And I was at the beach one time in Pacifica with friends, and one of my friends, his name's Mateo. Shout out to Mateo if he's listening. He said it should be RizzoCast, and I was like, that's awesome because Rizzo, for those that don't know, and anybody who may not know why the podcast is called RizzoCast, because I get the question a lot, is my nickname in high school was Rizzo. One of the PE coaches uh, also taught my brother and called my brother Rizzo. And then when I got in his class, he called me Rizzo. And it just took off because there was another Steven on the baseball team too, who's actually one of my good friends, Steven Elsner. And like teachers called me Rizzo. The whole baseball team called me Rizzo. Everybody in my class called me Rizzo. The principal still calls me Rizzo. Like I am not Steven at Reardon. I'm Rizzo. So I'm like, that'd be cool. And it didn't really carry on to SF State. There's a few people that call me Rizzo, just because I've explained this whole thing to them. But that's how it became RizzoCast is again, a suggestion that was given to me that I screenshotted in my head. And that night I changed all the social medias. I changed all like the logos and everything, and we started as RizzoCast. But yeah, it was out of boredom mostly. And here we are now.
Did you think you'd still be going 170 episodes in like 3 or 4 years later?
No, not really, because I had tried doing a podcast before and I only did like 2 episodes. And I think the cool thing is like that is one of the things I'm most proud of, because like there's been times where I've started something or I've said I'm going to start something and I don't follow through. And this one I have followed through. And there's been times where like I wouldn't record for a month and a half. But just because life gets in the way and school and all that. And like just here's a good example. I think I recorded on March 1st and there was a big gap from when I didn't record again. And then like the past few weeks, I'm like, okay, I got to catch up. Um, but I did not think that I would get to 170, and I did not think that I would get some of the people that I've gotten to come on before. But I think the thing that's kept me engaged is that like it's not me talking. Well, this one's me talking. It's me asking questions. So I feel like it's valuable reps that I've gotten for interviews. And interviewing is now something that I view as a strong suit and a strength because of this podcast. And also like just producing it and getting my name out there, and having this big portfolio of people that not only the listener gets to learn from, but I feel like I take something away from every person I talk to as well. So
And I wasn't planning on asking this, but you mentioned, you're surprised of some of the people you've gotten on. So someone says, Steven, okay, I want to check out your podcast. Which episode should I listen to? What one or two maybe come to mind that you say, check out this one?
oh, there's a few really good. I mean, the one that comes to mind is Renell Brooks Moon. That one was exceptional. She was so accommodating in that when, I think the Giants were on the road. Um, and she came on the podcast, very gracious with her time. That was one of the first times where I got into someone's like career that wasn't like associated, like it wasn't me saying, tell me a little bit about what's your scouting report, or you got drafted, what was your draft story. It was something different. It was like now someone
Mm-hmm.
with a different career path that I could kind of talk to. So that one was fun, and she ended up doing like the intro, like now hosting the RizzoCast, the little theme.
I think I gave you that mind screenshot. I said you should have her announce you.
Yes, I think that's right actually. And I blushed like hell. But there's been a few others, like Bob Kendrick from the Negro Leagues Museum. I think there is that was crazy because it was the morning of, and we scheduled it before it happened. But that was the morning of Hank Aaron's funeral, and Bob was going to go right after and do a eulogy for Hank Aaron, and he still managed to have time to make time for me, and always gracious for that. But he's one of the best podcast guests I think anywhere. And then there's been a few that I take away, like John Shea is awesome. He is someone that that was like any of the ones where it's like I feel like I'm getting a crash course. Lil Cone, I felt like I got a crash course in writing, and learning about writing. There's been plenty of fun ones where I've had on like my coaches from Reardon, people that I've played with, people that I've played against who are similar ages. Um, and then of course there's like the big league aspect of it where I always get a thrill when I get to have like the Tyler Glassnows on, and Bill Lasky, and I feel like I have a whole team. I occasionally post a screenshot of like the RizzoCast roster, but it's like a bunch of names that like aren't huge, but like are guys that I remember from like baseball card packs, like Adam Rosales. And I just had Darren Ford. And like I feel like that's kind of the sweet spot for me. I get excited about those guys because nobody else does. So
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I was going to mention the John Shea one. The Dave Dravecki one's one of my
that
favorites as
one's good
well.
too.
So,
Yeah.
so now everyone listening who might be new to the
The batting
podcast,
stance guy too.
yeah,
That
batting
one was
stance guy
great.
was
So I'm thinking of all of them now. The batting stance guy one was amazing because I had watched him as a kid, and he was one of my dream when I first like changed it from like high school, college kids. He was one of the guys that like, okay, batting stance guy, like I feel like we're similar baseball fans, and just the way we think. And I, not that I could do batting stance as well, but just he's just a huge fan. And that was I could have gone on with him. And then Jeff Pearlman, who is my favorite sports writer, who's my favorite author. He's been on twice now, and that like he's someone I could have on like 5 times and I wouldn't get bored of Jeff Pearlman because he gives the best journalism advice and he's someone that has stories for days. So he's a good TikTok follow now too. But so those are a few. I could go on and on, but those are a few that are
Yeah.
stand out.
Yeah. Now, people who are relatively new to the podcast, they can go back and kind of listen to some of those gems and keep on rolling with RizzoCast.
Yeah, and I make
Uh,
sure also that like they're evergreen too. So there's a lot of them that like just don't even focus on current day stuff. Sometimes I'll start with current day stuff. Like if it's the postseason, I'll go, who do you got in this postseason? But like the Dravecki one, like it's something that could be listened to anytime. And the goal for me is to like not let them age too much. So
yeah. I don't have a transition for this one,
mhm.
but you recently did graduate from college. So you got your graduation finally, Stephen.
Yes.
Congratulations, since you didn't get to in high school. What were some of the biggest challenges and some of the things you enjoyed most about, the college experience and getting through that entire process?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons like why I wanted to do this because 170th episode and graduating college and um the challenges were probably just time management. I think that's no surprise. I got used to it after a while, but there would be days where, working for the school newspaper, Golden Gate Express, and I would be in the newsroom from 9 a.m. and I wouldn't get home until 10:30 p.m. And it was a lot. And there would be days where I'd work Giants and, leave straight from school. There's one time where I actually went back from the Giants game back to school, like it was a night game and people were still, so it got a little crazy at times. And, I know my family was like, "What are you doing there? What do you do there all day?" And but time management and just the other classes that weren't journalism related. Because in college, like once you get out of high school, just like I don't feel the need to take a math class again. I don't feel the need to take a history class. I don't feel the need to take a science class. Like I only wanted to do journalism in college. And once I transferred to SF State and most of my classes were journalism, it just became more enjoyable. And shout out to the people at SF State in the newsroom. They became like a family to me, and I know I'm going to stay in touch with a lot of them. A few of them in particular who've been really special, but that I know I'm going to stay in touch with a good number of them. They've been extremely helpful, and when you spend that much time around people, like they become very close. So, there's people that helped along the way, and I think definitely that had an impact. And just having that graduation was cool. Once the high school one didn't happen, I had this one circled on my calendar. I was like, I'm gonna get a degree in journalism, and I'm having a grad party, and I'm gonna walk the stage, and nobody's gonna stop me. So I'm glad that it happened, and there wasn't anything like a lightning strike that could have ruined the moment. But um, I graduated at Oracle Park. For those that don't know, it was a very San Francisco day, and then the next day was the journalism graduation. Then a week later was the grad party. So it all went well. But I would say time management was the biggest thing I learned, and also leadership. Because when you're an editor at a college newspaper, there's a lot of fires you gotta put out. And I wasn't always the one putting out fires. There's people that oftentimes had more fires than I did. But just having that responsibility of um, you know, I had to know every story. I had to know who's taking pictures for every story, who's editing every story, what stage the story's in. It becomes a lot, but I enjoyed doing it.
Awesome. Well, you've done a lot in media, especially at such a young age, more than plenty of people who are much older than you. As you mentioned, you've been editor and writer at multiple newspapers. You've started multiple podcasts. Your other one's really good, I gotta say. Big
Yeah.
fan. You've covered the Giants, and we'll get into more of that in a little bit. What do you attribute to being able to do so much at such a young age?
Oh man, that's a good question. I get asked that a little bit. Probably just like I like doing stuff. Like and I like having a to-do list and I like the satisfaction of crossing stuff off the to-do list. And I feel like I always keep my eyes open for like what's next. And that's something that's happening right now. Like freshly graduated college, got to figure out what's next, and I'm always kind of having my eyes open for what's next. And I think it just all goes down to like goal setting. And I've never been like a big long-term goal. Like I'm not the type of person that's going to say I'm going to be married at 30 with 2 kids or else, but more so like the short-term goals have got me going. And I think that comes from like playing sports. And I think like the hungerness also comes from sports and the like desire to be good. And I have a lot of fear of like imposter syndrome. And I feel like at some point it's going to happen and it's normal when it's going to happen. Like I'm going to get a job and I'm going to feel like I don't belong. And that's just like part of it. Right. So I still have a lot of that kind of like sits with me a little bit, but I know like a lot of what I've done is like very early and I'm not a finished product by any means. I don't think anybody is, but like especially I mean if you read a game story, there's still a lot of things that I could do better that I've written. But I would just say that it comes from like me wanting to do better and to be the best. I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it does. It does for sure. And I don't know. You mentioned imposter syndrome, and you as we talked about a moment ago, and most of your listeners know, you cover the Giants for SFBay. I think how old were you when you covered your first game? 18,
19,
19.
19.
So 19 years old, covering the Giants in the press box. How did that opportunity materialize? And what was it like going into that press box through past that sign you pointed at as a 9-year-old for the first time?
Yeah, so I was at Skyline still, Skyline College, and I was doing my little blog thing. I don't think I was doing it regularly. I definitely had RizzoCast at the time. I was almost a year, pretty much past a year into that. Um, and it's funny because in high school, I never really wrote baseball because that would have been a conflict of interest. I was on the team. And in college, like we had such a small staff that like, and I was in a leadership position, editor in chief for 2 semesters, that I was never able to like focus solely on baseball. So I'd written baseball stories, but never really a baseball game. Um, and a mutual friend of ours, Taylor Worth, who you know and I know, who has kind of become, and shout out to Taylor, he's kind of become a key mentor in my career and somebody that I look to, and basically all those guys at NBC Sports Bay Area, Taylor, Angelina, Jordan, they've all been very helpful. Um, and Taylor was writing for SFBay, and he got a job at NBC Sports Bay Area. And SFBay is like a smaller site. Throughout their existence, they have been a stepping stone for a lot of young journalists. Shayna Rubin was from SF Bay. She's now the Chronicle beat writer for the Giants. There's been, a few others that have come from SF Bay who have gotten pretty good jobs in journalism. Um, and it's good for like college age type of writers. So when Taylor left, he recommended, hey, I think you should, try and get your name out there and apply. So I sent out an email to the editor, Jesse, and I sent maybe probably a few emails, probably about 4 or 5 emails, and Jesse responded back and said, hey, I appreciate it. Uh, send me some of your clips. So I sent a few of the clips that I did have. Um, and Jesse, if you're listening, because he might be, I didn't have any game writing experience up until this point at all. And he said, okay, we're going to do a few test games. So I remember doing a few games off the TV. One of them was a giant Dodger game, and I had to write a game story off the TV. And it was one of those games at Dodger Stadium. It was a day game where the Giants just completely lit up Julio Urias in 2021. It was sometime in May. Um, Completely lit him up. And now hindsight, it's like good, right? But
Yeah.
and then after that, he's like, all right, we're doing press box stuff now. Like it's time to get called up. And he asked for like a photo of me, my date of birth. And then soon enough, it was either a Wednesday afternoon game or a Sunday afternoon game. And um against the Cubs, it was June 6th or something, 6th or 7th along that time. And my brother works at the ballpark too as an usher, so we came down together, and my heart was beating very quickly. 19 years old, like nobody is supposed to be in this position yet. And granted, it's not the Chronicle, it's not the Mercury News, but it's still something important that I valued. And I remember instead of like walking through the tunnel, I walked up the ramp that the fans walk in. This was hours before the game started, and I was the first one in there because I got the email saying that the gates opened at 8 a.m. or what was it? I think it was 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. on game days, on day games, 4 hours before first pitch. And I didn't realize that like that's when they open, not when people usually get there. So I get in there and nobody's in there, and I'm very tense. I find the first spot that I see in the front row, and I'm just kind of like very, very tense at my computer. I'm like acting like I'm doing something. I'm going down Baseball Reference for no reason. Um, and then like everybody kind of starts coming in, and Carrie Crowley came up to me, who's also, been one of my mentors, and he shook my hand and said like, "Hey, welcome. You're the youngest guy in here, but just want to let you know that you belong in here." And that eased me a little bit. And I think for the first few times that I covered games, um, I didn't say a word to anybody, and I didn't ask a question. It was still on Zoom, the press conferences because of COVID. And then the next year's is when the clubhouse opened. But it was intimidating. It was intimidating, but I feel like I got more of a thrill seeing like the people that I used to read, whose articles I used to read. Um, like I got more thrill out of seeing like John Shea and Susan Slusser and Alex Pavlovich and Andrew Baggerly than I did from seeing like Mauricio Dubon. And, it was weird. It was interesting. But that was kind of how it started. And now 2024, still going at it. I work one game per home series. So usually twice, maybe 3 times a week. Um, I, uh, I switch out night games, day games, whatever kind of I choose. That's kind of what I work. So it's been a very rewarding experience. I've met a lot of people that are friends now, and that I get to kind of follow their work too. And I've gotten that experience very early, so it's been helpful.
Are the butterflies still there? Are you still as tense when you get into the press box? Do you feel like you belong a little bit more now that you've have a few seasons under your belt?
I don't know if I like ever feel like I belong per se. Like still 22 years old, I still walk in there feeling like, oh God, I probably don't belong here. But the butterflies still are there when I walk in, when I open the press box door. And then, once I get settled, like it's all gone. But I think that's not nervousness anymore, but just more excitement. Because I get butterflies when I walk into any Major League Baseball stadium because I love the sport, always have, always will. Um, and it's kind of been interesting walking in there like this season, and I think my third season doing it, and it's still like I still feel it. So um and I'm less nervous about like asking a question that I want to know the answer to, but it's still very much uh an enjoyable thing, and I think that will always be the case. And maybe at some point, and I know at some point, I'll probably take a step back from it. And maybe maybe another job in journalism I get is like doing high school sports or college sports, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the sacrifice because I know that's just going to be extra reps, and I know that the experience that I have already has been helpful already, and it's going to play at any level. So.
Awesome. Well, I know you've had some amazing mentors. You just reeled off some of them, Taylor Wirth, Carrie Crowley, Alex Pavlovich. What's it been like to be able to pick the brains of some of those people that you've admired or looked up to? And feel free to shout any other mentors out that you haven't mentioned yet.
Yeah, it's been cool. I think more so. I talked to some people about what they do. I mentioned John Shea, like shared a lot in the podcast. But mostly I've mostly feel like I've learned from like watching from example. And Susan Slusser is just a good example of this. We don't like talk a whole lot at all, but I watch the way she goes about her business and how she's always asking questions that are the right questions to ask. Like she's always in the mix when it comes to asking about injuries and when it comes to asking about the vibe of the team. And there's journalists out there that have good player relationships. There's some of them in there that have good front office relationships, and just watching different individuals like work the clubhouse after a game. And what I mean by that is, a team wins and everybody wants to go up to the guy that hit the 3-run homer. Um, but some of these people will go up to, a middle reliever and talk to them while everybody's talking to the guy that hit the three-run homer. And then after the media leaves the guy that hit the three-run homer, that person will go back and talk to them. So it's just working the room is something that I've seen from example, and what these like people are able to do. And I feel like I'm miles away from that. Miles away from their consistency in writing every day because I'm not there every day. So, but I do get to see a little bit of what they do, and I'm just kind of enamored by their way to work the room and the way they go about their business from like an example standpoint, the lead by example types.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants press box has some good examples to learn from. So you're learning from
Yeah.
some great
And
people
also
there.
just like reading the same story, the same game, like will humble you real quick. Like there's times where like I'll write something and I'll write a game story and then I'll go and read Shayna's story or Susan's story or Baggerly's story, and it's like there's one that I put in, Randy Rodriguez got his first MLB win out of the bullpen, and I didn't even include that in the original story. And I'm like, what am I doing? How did I not realize that happened? And one of these days I'll get there, but there's still a lot to learn. But I think it's always humbling comparing, not comparing, but there's a few people that I want to take from a little bit here, a little bit there, but just seeing how their stories group up, it's just so much better, and it's good to learn from that.
Definitely. And, from receiving advice to giving it, I know you've been a mentor to some people. You've gotten to travel and speak at some events and conferences about your experience, whether it be writing or starting a podcast. So what's it like to have those opportunities and to have people who value your journey and your advice? It's got to be kind of a crazy full circle experience almost.
Yeah, a little bit, and this is one of the things that I enjoy doing most. There's I've gotten the chance, and like whenever people come up to me and ask me about um like just advice, like it's interesting because like still I'm in the stage where I'm always going to be asking for advice, and even more so at a young age. So sometimes it feels like, God, I'm honored, but I'm also 22 years old and still in college at the time. And so that's kind of the funny part about it. But I feel like I do have advice to give, especially when it comes to starting a blog, starting a podcast. Um, some of the things that I've learned from a good game story, or just like the nerves of interviewing. Um, and there's been a few people like um Aiden might be listening to this. Aiden's someone that I'm very proud of. He goes to Reardon. He's doing a good job for the newspaper. He's starting his new kind of venture, his new Giants blog, which is cool. And he's someone that I've really enjoyed getting to know. And then you mentioned some of the conferences. I spoke at a high school conference last year about podcasting in San Francisco, and then in La Jolla at the Hyatt Regency, um, podcasting. The room was filled with like 60 people, 40, maybe 40 to 60 people, somewhere in that range. And afterwards, everybody was coming up to me and they were, "Oh, what's your Instagram?" And I've heard from a few of those people now. And they're asking me questions, they're picking my brain, and like I will never turn anybody down when they ask anything, because when I get turned down by someone, usually I don't get turned down. Usually I get no answer. But I would want the same type of relationship to be, I'd want to treat people the way that I would want to be treated. So I have no issues giving any advice, looking over stories. So if anybody's listening, anybody wants me to like read your work. CJ2 is another one on Giants Twitter that always has good content. And I slack sometimes on looking at his stuff all the time, but um, he does a really good job. There's a bunch of people that are like always kind of asking, and I'm so happy to supply the insight. What little insight I have is still insight.
So I'm going to open it up to you for a second. I got one more question, and then we'll have a little bit of fun at the end. Is there any, it's your show. Was there anything you wanted your listeners to know, or any topic you want to talk about for a minute that you want your listeners to know about?
No, not really. I think like you might be coming for the main host of RizzoCast, Tyler. You might be filling this position full time now. No, this was good, and again, I just wanted to, I realized that I've done 169 episodes, and um, a lot of that time is spent researching other people, getting to know other people, highlighting other people, promoting other people. And I feel like the audience sometimes may not know me. So I feel like it's a good time to, graduating college, a good time to kind of um, reintroduce myself. And if you're a longtime listener, maybe you learned something that you didn't know, and maybe it could be of, um, of I don't know.
Of
It could be
value.
help. Yeah, value. There you go. Value in future episodes, just to see where my head is at all the time. So, yeah, it's my baseball story. I'm always happy to tell it, and I think we covered a lot of bases there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you're always open with your time for anybody that reaches out. You know how to network and make your
Mhm.
connections. So anyone who talks to Steven will learn a lot. My last actual question before we get into some fun here at the end is, what's next for Steven Risotto? You mentioned it a little bit. Is there anything particular you're looking to get into? Is there anything that piques your interest that you haven't done yet that you want to learn more about? What's down the pipeline, man?
Yeah, I think like right now, just graduated a few weeks ago and kind of laying low right now, catching up on some of the things that I wanted to do, and just a break was needed. I think I mentioned just the months on end of just it felt like 12-hour days at school. Just getting a break from that and getting a chance to kind of recuperate a little bit, and but again, I'm always having my eye out because I want to kind of start everything as soon as possible in a lot of ways, whether that be sports journalism, whether that be in baseball, whether that be covering high school sports, whether that even be covering news, or a features beat or something like that, or local news. Like getting into journalism in any way, I feel like is a goal of mine, and I'll be keeping the eye out for jobs and everything. And I've talked to some people about them already, gone through the process just a little bit. That's been helpful so far. So just kind of keeping an eye out for any opportunities that come up, and I'm not at a stage right now where I could be selective in any sense of the word. But always keeping an eye out is something that is right now the goal, but also relaxing a little bit because it's been a crazy few months.
Cool. Well, yeah. So now, the interview portion's over. You've done great, man. Great guest. We're gonna open it up. We're gonna do some kind of quick fire stuff. One piece you're gonna recognize. For those listening, Stephen and I have a podcast together called The Shutdown Inning, and when we have a guest, we do the speedy shutdown. I think we did this together once on an episode just to try it out. So maybe some of you have heard it, maybe some of you haven't. So, Stephen, if you could trade places with any player in today's game, who would it be?
Ooh. Any player in today's game, I think I might have to go with Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper would be my answer. I think he has a lot of aura. He's somebody that was on Sports Illustrated at 16 years old. 16 years old, he was on Sports Illustrated, and it is not easy to live up to expectations in sports, especially in baseball when you're only succeeding 30% of the time at the plate. Um, it's difficult to come through and have a great career after that. And Bryce Harper, he was looked at as overrated for a long period of time. I think he's underrated now. He's on a great team. He's making a lot of money. He's got a good family. Like I feel like that's kind of who I would want to be trading places with. He was one of my first jerseys that I got to in baseball. So he's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's crazy to think how long he's been playing, and I think he just turned 30. So that's a good choice, man.
Yeah.
What's the funniest movie of all time?
You are backing me into a corner because I know this is your kind of wheelhouse a little bit. Um, Funniest movie of all time. Um,
You're in a down mood. You need something will make you
I
laugh. What
know.
are you putting on?
I'm gonna stick with the baseball movie and I'm gonna go with Major League. Major League to me is really funny. I don't know if it's the funniest movie of all time. I could if I had more time, I would think of something maybe funnier, but it's hilarious. And like starting from the beginning, like one of the things I think of is Lou Brown peeing on Roger Dorn's contract when he's like, it's not my, it's not my contract to do any like labor activity or whatever it is that's against my will or something like that. Um, and Rick Vaughn coming to spring training from jail. Like all of that is hilarious to me. And it's combined with baseball, which is something that I love, obviously. So I like Adam Sandler too. I'm a big Adam Sandler fan. I'm a big Kevin Hart fan too. I think he's really funny. Um, so probably in that realm too. I like some of the movie early Adam Sandler stuff too, like the Happy Gilmores of the world, the Billy Madisons, more of that than some of his like recent stuff.
Nice. Well, yeah, I mean, and Major League, it's timeless, and we get to see the real life Major League working out in Oakland right now.
Yeah.
So, if you could watch any player you never saw live, who would it be? And I mean, I guess for you, this is like it could be Barry Bonds even, or 2010 previous. But so who are you going back in time to see?
Ooh, I think it would be Willie Mays. I think I would go back and see Willie Mays, just like the way people talk about him, like the athlete that he is, and just what big, what high profile of a person he was at that time, being an athlete, being kind of like the civil rights icon too, and more than just sports, he was a celebrity. He was on all these shows, all these sitcoms, just being there to not just watch him play and watch him play defense and watch him hit home runs and watch him steal bases and watch the hat fly off, but just to kind of get a sense of like his importance to the baseball world, the athletic world, just pop culture in general. I feel like that would be cool, but there's a few others too. Like I'd want to obviously see Babe Ruth, Satchel Paige, Jackie Robinson. There's probably a boatload of guys that I'd want to see play. But probably Willie Mays is my guess.
Yeah, I'm 99% sure you read it. 24 by John Shea.
Oh yeah, it's on my
One
bookshelf
of
right
my
here.
one of my favorite books of all time. You talked about it with John a lot on
Yeah.
the pod. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, superpower. So I feel like I wouldn't want to read minds because, there's a lot of times where I just don't feel like I care what
That would be
people,
scary.
yeah, people are thinking. But more so, I feel like teleporting would be really cool. Um, I'm gonna combine teleporting and time traveling. That would be really cool if like I could go back in time to any day,
So you're
uh,
traveling places and time. Look at
traveling
you.
places and time. And I think teleporting like would be cool because you wouldn't have to hop on a plane and you wouldn't have to get in a car. So if I said, Tyler, I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna go get like a bagel from this New York shop over here, and then I'm gonna come right back. I could do that with teleportation.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I could say, all right, I'm gonna go to the Mets game tonight. I'll be right back, and then come back and it'd be fine. So I think teleporting would be super cool. It would run the transportation industry out of everything, but it would be super cool.
Well, not everyone would have it. It wouldn't be a superpower if everyone had it.
That's
Just
very
Steven
true,
has it.
actually. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Now I'll have to change the wording on this one a little bit. If you weren't going to be a journalist, you'd be.
Uh, Honestly, I've thought maybe something that has to do with education. Maybe like a teacher or something. Um, Someone who is either teaching at the high school. I don't know what subject that would be. Maybe journalism. I don't, or a coach. I feel like I would want to do coaching as well. But if you want like a way outside perspective, I think like the something in hospitality industry, but like not like behind the scenes in hospitality, like marketing a business, I feel like would be cool. So something along the lines of that.
Awesome. Well, that's the speedy shutdown portion. We're
Yeah.
going to pivot. I'm going to do this or that. It's kind of like a comment that you see it on like Instagram and stuff all the time, people filling stuff out. I tried to think of one to Propel, but I couldn't think of one like this or Propel. Like, what's your deal with Propel, man? If
So
people listening who don't know, Steven drinks almost exclusively Propel.
yes, exclusively is crazy. There's been a few like things throughout my life where like I used to drink or eat as a kid and then like a big gap of time went by and then I like recently picked it up. So I remember drinking Propel like a long time ago and then there's a big gap. And then in high school like for whatever reason a case appeared in my house. I think my parents bought a case of Propel or whatever and I was like, "Oh, I remember Propel. Like it's been a while." Um I drank one of them. I have a bottle actually right here that's empty. I don't know if anybody could see it because of the blur. Um, and I know people think it's like watered down awfulness, but it's not. I enjoy it. I like when it's cold, even when it's room temperature, it's good. I don't have an explanation as to why I would rather have that than Gatorade. Um, Sometimes I'll drink ice, sparkling ice, that brand. Sometimes I'm drinking right now Body Armor. But for whatever reason, Propel's been kind of the go-to, and I have it all the time.
There you go. All
Yeah.
right. So back to the real this or that because I couldn't think of one for Propel, but that had to be addressed.
Yes.
Introvert or extrovert?
It's changed a lot. So more of an extrovert now, but it used to be a lot different because when before journalism, I was a lot more introverted around people I didn't know. But now I have like a lot more courage and confidence to go up to somebody and introduce myself. Um, and the podcast has helped with that too, because I'm bringing someone in from a Zoom waiting room all the time, and I have to come up with small talk before I hit record, and I have to come up with conversation, and I introduce myself, and that's all helped. And now when I'm around my friends, sometimes I'm a psycho and I'm too loud, and I have dad jokes that are crazy and um all that. But I think it's changed over time. I'm more of extroverted now. But I used to be the one where my mom would introduce me and I'd like hide behind her back. But yeah,
All right. Early bird or night owl?
probably a night owl, but a little bit of both because I'm still young enough to where I could go to bed at 2 and wake up at 8:30 and be fine. I get a lot of stuff done at night. And I feel like those are like the prime hour, and I look forward to my nights, to be honest. I look forward to like the range between 10:30 to like 1:30. Because I feel like I could get a lot of stuff done, whether it's catching up on something I missed on TV, whether it's watching a movie, whether it's like prepping for podcasts the next day. That would be my homework time. That's often my writing time. Um, in the morning, I don't. Maybe there's one day a week where like, okay, you know what? I have nothing in the morning. I'll sleep till 10. But that rarely happens, to be honest. I feel like if I'm still in bed early, then I feel like half my day is gone. Or if I'm in my bed till certain time, I feel like half my day is gone. But definitely a night owl. But I have no issue with setting my alarm if I need to at 7 o'clock. That just means I'll just go to bed sooner. So I have pretty good discipline when it comes to that. I know how many hours of sleep I need. So I would still go with night owl though.
All right. And this one, I probably wouldn't have included it if an occurrence hadn't happened on our other podcast, but coffee or tea?
None.
Propel,
Yeah,
duh.
yeah, none. So people always keep telling me, especially people in journalism, especially my Uncle Pat. I visited him in Nebraska in Lincoln, Nebraska in December, and he's like, "Hey, do you want coffee, like, or anything?" And I was like, "No, I don't drink coffee." And he's like, "Oh, you will." Because I always hear about deadlines, and I'm gonna need coffee. And he's not the first person that's told me that, like, you need coffee, or eventually you're gonna get hooked. I have not gotten hooked yet. I do just fine without coffee. Tea to me is okay. It's kind of disgusting. It would need to be like a little bit flavored differently, like a different flavor than just green tea or whatever the default that people usually have is. So I have not been hooked on either, but I probably look at tea the way Ted Lasso looks at tea. Um, but yeah, probably either. Because I also like water. Even aside from Propel
Well,
and
yeah,
Gator
you
and all
like
that.
Propel.
Yeah, I like water too. So
All right. Reading or writing? And I think there's a couple different ways you could do this. Which one would you prefer to do? Or like if you could only do one, which would you do?
this is gonna sound very strange as someone who like likes writing, but I think I like reading a lot more. Um, and I think the reason I'm saying this is because I feel like a lot of the skills that I've picked up from writing is from reading. Um, from reading The Athletic, from reading the Chronicle. I'm a hoarder for baseball books and sports books. Um, and just reading those like has gotten me better. And that's one of the best like advice that I could give to people who want to become a better writer. It's like just read good shit. like read good authors, read, find authors. And that's why I always bring up Jeff Pearlman for like every conversation about journalism. Find like people that I feel like I could connect with their writing style. And I feel like reading has had a big impact on me in becoming a good writer or a decent writer.
Awesome. And then I think I know the answer to this one just from what you did when you played, but would you rather hit a walk-off grand slam or strike someone out with who's the winning run at the plate to end the game?
Probably strike someone out. I didn't get too many strikeouts because again, didn't throw the hardest. Usually the ball was in play. But I like the art of pitching. I find it enjoyable. So that's probably what I would pick. Even though the walk-off sounds fantastic and I would want to experience that at least once at some point. I don't know when that would even be, an alumni game. Um, or whenever we have like a Twitter softball game that needs to be set up. That would be actually fun, by the way. We gotta get Giants Twitter involved in that. Something like that. But I would say striking out and walking off the mound and doing that.
Are you doing like the Brian Wilson lights out after, or are you just getting the ball from the catcher and start shaking hands?
Probably like a fist bump. Like I feel like one of the things that I always did on the mound, like, is I would like jump. It wasn't like to show any, like, obviously I don't even care about, the other team and like what they think, because I nothing I did was ever with intention of like, I don't know. But I liked like when there would be a ground ball to third and it would be a 5-4-3 double play, I would like jump and then like get the ball back quickly. That would be my emotion, is like jumping. And if it was a good inning, I would run off the mound, and that was like my way of signaling that it was good. Yeah, I don't know. Or I pump me up. Running off the mound, not like fist pumping or anything. Or like I'd clap sometimes, like for a good defensive player, like clap in my glove, but like nothing crazy.
All right. And RizzoCast or shut down it? No, I'm just joking.
Shut down inning.
Uh, well, Steven, man, that's all I got. Thanks for the opportunity to do this, man. I know you had some co-hosts over the years. I really appreciate that you thought of me when you wanted to do this and trusted me with the keys to this car. It's been a lot of fun working with you on our podcast, being able to call you a friend and work with you. It's brought me a lot of happiness. And it's been awesome just to watch you follow your dreams, man. From one of the first times I talked to you, you said, I'm going to cover the Giants someday. Getting to watch you do that has been awesome. And, I know it's just the beginning. Me and everyone listening are excited to see what's next. So,
Well, yeah, Tyler, I appreciate you doing this, and likewise for a lot of what you said, and I feel the same. And there's nobody, like, I was trying to think of like who else other than Tyler would be like who I could see doing this, and I couldn't think of anyone really. So, you're the one that came to mind. You've helped me tremendously, and I enjoy the shutdown inning, even though like there's days where you got to deal with me not being available. But I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed the times we've gone to banana games and all that, and all of that has been really incredible. And just all the people from Twitter and social media that have just been so good. Like they're just a part of this journey as I am, to be honest. So I give a lot of credit to where credit's due, and I appreciate you agreeing to do this because this was a lot of fun.
yes, it was. Well, thank you for your time. Thanks for being a guest on RizzoCast. You've been so gracious with your time. If you want to check out Steven and I in action together, you can check out our show, Shutdown Inning, on Twitter at shutdown_inning. But most importantly, you should be following this show, RizzoCast, on Twitter and Instagram at RizzoCast. Check out the show wherever you consume your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, etc. Steven's had some amazing guests recently, and there's more in the pipeline. So continue to follow along. And that's what's up.
See you next time.